This morning, Max Boot and his new biography, Reagan, His Life and Legend. 10 years plus in the making, it is the most comprehensive biography yet of our 40th president. Ronald Reagan is still a figure both celebrated and scorned. Reading Boot's book may cause you to feel both all over again, no matter what your political leaning.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
You know the greatest hits.
Dovii no provii. Trust but verify.
Actor.
Last town we was in, I had to sit around for 30 days waiting for you to get out of the jug.
Governor.
It's time that some people were reminded that actors are people.
Then president.
Mr. President!
Through an assassination attempt. Iran-Contra.
I do not recall who told me that, but that was the information that I had.
And the end of the Cold War.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
But with the passage of time and access to newly released material, Max Boot believes Ronald Reagan's life deserves new scrutiny.
I'm not sure how much I would have gotten even if I'd been able to sit down and interview Reagan, although I certainly did sit down and interview a lot of his aides. But, you know, I think to really understand Reagan, you kind of have to research around him.
Boot, a former Republican who left the party and now considers himself independent, began this project in 2013. The result? Reagan, His Life and Legend.
There really was not a great biography of Ronald Reagan, and I felt like there was kind of a gap on the bookshelf that needed to be filled.
Reagan's official biographer, Edmund Morris, got so frustrated by the enigma of the man that he inserted a fictional character and wrote a bizarre book called Dutch. Reagan let almost no one in, except maybe his wife, Nancy.
There was always this kind of inner glacial reserve, so this real distinction between the public, seemingly easygoing, outgoing Reagan and the private man who was actually kind of a loner, kind of a hermit.
He didn't have a lot of friends, and he didn't want a lot of friends.
Exactly right, yeah, because his idea of a great evening was basically sitting with Nancy in front of the TV, watching, you know, Mission Impossible or Bonanza, or maybe sitting down and reading a book. That's all he wanted to do. He didn't really want to go out and socialize.
Ronald Reagan was raised in small towns in Illinois. His dad, an alcoholic salesman, constantly moving the family around. Reagan's mom, Nell, was a frustrated thespian. Reagan's greatest claim to early glory was as a lifeguard who saved dozens of people from drowning. He began to find his voice on the radio before searching for stardom in Hollywood.
Ask them to go in there with all they've got. Win just one for the Kipper.
He found it, with a job that, along with his poor eyesight, allowed him to avoid serving in combat during World War II.
Excuse me, sir, but how could anybody mistake a P-40 for a Zero?
By, among other things, making training films.
Radial engine, oil cooler, air scoop at bottom of nose. It's a Zero, check!
Reagan's thirst for politics was first quenched as leader of the Screen Actors Guild. In that capacity, testifying before the House Un-American Activities Committee, the public first got a taste of his hard-line anti-communist stance.
We have been eminently successful in preventing them from their usual tactic of trying to run a majority of an organization with a well-organized minority.
The one-time liberal turned conservative, and in the wake of Vietnam, Watergate, and the oil crisis of the 1970s, went on to redefine Republican politics. To this day, some wonder how.
His national security advisor said he knows so little but accomplishes so much.
Yes.
I think that's something a lot of people seem to say. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. I think that is kind of the paradox of Ronald Reagan.
Oliver Wendell Holmes famously said Franklin Roosevelt had a second-class intellect, but a first-class temperament. Of Reagan, many said the same, which may be why he was effective, even as the scorecard is constantly being revised.
I think a lot of the things that he was criticized for when he was in office don't really stand up to much scrutiny or don't have as much resonance today. For example, the biggest Democratic attack on him in the 1980s was that he ran up budget deficits, Well, in the years since then, we've seen much higher budget deficits, and the country has survived. But on the other hand, there are issues today that we're much more sensitized about that were not issues in the 1980s. For example, the fact that Reagan as president largely ignored the AIDS pandemic, didn't address this horrible disease, or he also was very soft on South Africa, and often catering to white backlash politics. Again, things that were kind of taken for granted in those days, but today look very different.
Whether Booth's book changes your mind is up to the reader. What it does do is give a fresh look at a man who, for better or worse, mattered, according to historians, more than any other president in the last 60 years.
What do you think Ronald Reagan can teach us today?
I think the big thing that Reagan can teach us is to separate campaigning from governing. Because on the campaign trail, Ronald Reagan could be this red-hot conservative. He would push all of the conservative buttons as a campaigner, which is why he was so popular on the right. But he understood the difference between running for office and actually being in office. And although, yes, as governor and president, he cut some taxes, he actually raised taxes a lot too. As governor of California, he passed the most liberal abortion law in the country. As president, he worked with Mikhail Gorbachev, even though a lot of people on the right thought he was being duped by Gorbachev. So I think that was really his genius, was his ability to put his campaign rhetoric aside and do what really worked.
My friends, we did it. We weren't just marking time. We made a difference. We made the city stronger. We made the city freer. And we left her in good hands. All in all, not bad. Not bad at all.
It's interesting. So many politicians you see really are desperately just trying to shape their legacy and, craft what they want to be remembered. It didn't seem like Reagan necessarily wanted to. I mean, I'm sure he wanted to be thought of well after he left, but it seemed like he was okay just walking away, and that's what I did.
But I think Nancy was worried
about
for crafting
sure.
that legacy.
Without question, Nancy played a massive role.
Yes.